Trump is absolutely destroying Kamala Harris. This election is over. I'm assuming that he's already won, and we haven't even made it to election day. And in this video, I'm going to explain exactly why I know he's most likely going to win. So in this last video, I talked about how Kamala Harris is being clearly oppressed or even possessed by demonic forces. It's very clear. If you want to look at it, be sure to check it out. We went through a list as to why we can discern that this is actually happening to her. It's a very logical explanation. I listed various ways why it's very clear, logically, to understand that she's being completely oppressed by demons, which is what is helping her switch up with accents, personality traits, even vocal tones quickly, like she doesn't even think about it. It's really wild. One of those reasons is because she has not properly secured the border. Now, why would that be a reason why demons would try to oppress her and attack her? We're going to get into that in this video. It gets so deep and you have to stay for this. It's no mystery that Kamala has not secured the border and provided protection and safeness for the United States of America. She opened the border and she has allowed any and everyone in. There has not been any vetting process. There has not been any strategy when it comes to who can and cannot come into this country. Hundreds of thousands of children have been lost at the border, and we can only assume that they have been trafficked, they have been unalived, or some other very scary, sad, tragic, horrific things have happened to them. We know that many gangs, specifically Venezuelan gangs in Chicago, have come into our territory and are trying to now take over the territory. We know that there have been so many violent, lethal crimes towards children and adults from the people that have crossed over the border illegally. We know this. Kamala had an opportunity to address this in her latest interview. Check this out.
More importantly, back to the original premise. Jocelyn Nungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. The policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungari's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying?
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I'm so sorry for her loss. Sincerely. But let's talk about what is happening right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about that as well.
But do you want to answer
in all
her?
fairness, I told you, I feel awful for what she and her family have experienced.
Right here, she had the full opportunity to actually give a sincere apology and pause, like a moment of silence to mourn and grieve for that lost child. But instead, quickly, she just brought it back to Trump and brought it back to campaigning. That right there shows you that there is a disconnect, a dissociation when it comes to what's actually happening at the border and how it's impacting U.S. citizens in horrific ways. We also know that people from other countries have different spiritual beliefs, and we know that they're bringing those rituals and spiritual beliefs into this country, which is impacting us on a supernatural level as well. Now, how does this relate to Trump and the likelihood that he will win? And if he doesn't win, it will be because of some freak accident, truly, or some like miracle that didn't come from God, because it's very clear the agenda that's moving through Kamala Harris. And I make videos like this so we don't only just see what's happening politically, like with our own eyes physically, but we see what's happening supernaturally. We have to be able to discern what's going on so we can make sound spiritual decisions. This whole concept of border protection and securing the territory of the United States of America is actually very biblical, more biblical than you could probably assume. And if you remember, people fought Trump tooth and nail for him to not build a wall to protect America from illegal immigrants. Do you remember that? They gave him such a hard time. They were calling him a racist. They were calling him all of the other names, as if he was being mean, as if he was not trying to allow America to be the thing that has made it thrive, which is immigration. I mean, immigrants have made this country, and people assumed that he was coming from a very hateful, discriminatory place when he was saying, we need to secure this border. But again, people missed that this is actually scriptural. Now, let me be very clear. Trump is not an angel. He's not a saint. I don't think he was sent from the heavens above, and he is an angel in man form. I'm not sitting up here saying that. But again, I am saying that he's pushing more of a biblical agenda than Kamala Harris is. And this one in particular, his fight for border protection is scriptural. Let's dig into why it is. If you don't remember the book of Nehemiah, I will refresh your memory. Nehemiah was called to come back to Jerusalem to rebuild Jerusalem after the Jews were taken captive and enslaved by the evil king of Babylon. You remember that? And then it was time. Nehemiah got the word from the Spirit that it's time for these enslaved Jews to be freed, and it's time to rebuild Jerusalem. So he actually left where he was and went back to Jerusalem, back to his home, to help rebuild this land, to invite the freed slaves back to the land of Jerusalem, to rebuild their homes, to build a wall to protect the New Jerusalem from outsiders and outside attacks. This is what God sent him to do. And throughout the book of Nehemiah, it talks about this whole process where Nehemiah became the governor of Jerusalem. He came back and they were fighting him. They were strategizing to take his life, to attack him. They really did not want him to come and build this wall. Does this not sound familiar? While they were building the wall, they had to be so strategic to protect themselves from the outsiders that were going to try to knock down the wall and then unalive them or attack them. So while they were building the wall, they had to carry weapons. And then they had different shifts of when men were building the wall and the others were sleeping, or the others were standing by as watchmen and holding their weapons just in case someone came attack them. And then they switched the shifts. And they stayed on guard this entire time as they were rebuilding this fortified wall to protect Jerusalem. They also tried to trick Nehemiah to meet up with them, so again, they could probably assassinate him. Does this not sound familiar? They were lying on Nehemiah. They were trying to accuse him of things that he didn't even do. And he was like, straight up, I didn't do that thing that you're saying. Like, you're tripping. That never happened. Nehemiah even went through a book of genealogy to ensure that the people that were native to the land of Jerusalem came back to claim their inherited land, for their houses to be rebuilt so that they could restore their homes and live in the land that they had inherited. There was an entire book of genealogy and there were lots of names. Does this not sound familiar? This sounds literally identical, doesn't it? I mean, reading through the book of genealogy, which in my opinion means the book of citizenship, who are actual citizens here. If they are not citizens, they're not allowed in unless they are vetted. Building a wall, not allowing people from the outside to come in because they came in to destroy Jerusalem and the wall. The outsiders were trying to weaken their hands so that they could not finish the wall. They were even trying to distort the way they were thinking about their own strength. So they were trying to tell Nehemiah, like, you're not strong, you're weak. You're not going to finish that wall. It's not going to work. And Nehemiah knew because God had called him to do so. So he ignored their accusations and their manipulations. They were trying to deceive him to make him stop building this wall. But he didn't stop, and he kept fighting, and he kept building. He kept gathering the Jews. They kept on guard, and they kept not allowing the outsiders who, again, were not vetted, were not connected to the genealogy of Jerusalem, and they didn't allow them in. And eventually, they built the wall in its entirety, and then they established the rules and laws of the land using the commandments that Moses communicated to the people. They celebrated, they had a new order, they had a new protected, safe space to live, and things were restored, and they made Jerusalem great again. And I cannot help but make this connection to Trump wanting to make America great again. Has he went about it perfectly? We already know he has not. But come on. I mean, it's like an identical match. It's mind-blowing when you think about it. And as long as Trump stays on this path to protect U.S. territory, and again, to allow people to come in, because clearly immigration is a beautiful thing. The U.S. wants people from all over the world to come in and add to the beauty of this nation, but in the right way, right? You can't just let anybody in. So when we think about God's expectation of the people he has put in a role of high-level responsibility to oversee a complete country, a whole territory, God also expects this person to hold the responsibility to protect that territory at all costs, to get everybody on the same page, to ensure that this territory is protected and sealed. This is how we honor the land that God has given us as a gift. And the land was given to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as a gift to oversee, and they fumbled the gift. So in my mind and in my spirit, it feels like, why would God just allow this gift to be fumbled again by the same exact person that fumbled the gift in the first place? Not only fumbled it, but went in complete rebellion against God's commandments and order when it comes to honoring this gift, this territory of the United States of America. What do you think about this? Does this resonate? Do you think that there's a connection there, or do you think I'm just making this up in my head and going crazy? Either way, all I know is that we need to pray. We need to pray for the future president, and I'm specifically going to pray for Trump, for God to equip him, for him to be open to God's authority, to God's commandments, and to God's order when it comes to his potential presidency over this territory of the U.S. I'm also praying for Kamala Harris because it's clear that she has been overtaken by demonic strongholds, demonic oppression and torment, and possibly possession. And she, again, does not need our vote. She needs our prayer. And let's just break this down on even a more minimal level when it comes to our own individual territory that God has gifted us with. We all get to honor the gift of the land that God gave us. We get to expand our territory, but we also have to protect our territory. Think about your specific household. Do you just let people in? Do you let intruders in without them knocking on the door, ringing the doorbell, or maybe going through the doorman or security downstairs? Do you let any stranger in your house? No, you protect it because you probably have a family. And if you don't, you probably will. And you want to protect your family at all costs. So there's always going to be a strategy to who you do let in your space and who you do not let in your space. So imagine this on a grander scale when we're talking about being the president of the United States and how this president is to treat our country as he or she would our home, our sanctuary, our oasis for the people of this land. That should be protected and honored according to God's law. This election is so spiritual that these political conversations have seeped into my videos, which again blows my mind because I have never talked politics like this before. But here we are. Life is getting more and more spiritual and the devil is getting more and more bold in our faces. So we have to clap back and talk about it. And if you liked this video because you've been here for this long, be sure you hit that like button. Be sure you subscribe and share this video with a friend. Hit the notification bell because we want to get these videos out in the algorithm. And if you want to dive deeper with me, then first you should know who I am. My name's Alisha Bradley, and I'm the founder of AlishaBMinistries. And the mission at my ministry is to supernaturally eliminate mental illness through the power of biblical knowledge in Christ. I help people overcome mental illness through various ways. One of the main ways right now is I'm building out a platform for coaching, counseling, and educational tools to help people overcome mental illness. This is a movement that I will not stop until I see this fully in formation. If you partner with me, you are contributing to that movement. So if you care about mental illness, if you care about mental health, and if you want to help support people getting free mental health services, then don't just say you care. It's easy for us to say, yeah, I really care about that cause. That's really special. Yeah, go you. But it's another to actually care and show you care. So if you want to show you care, join me on Patreon, and you get perks there. You get access to exclusive content that is not anywhere else on any other social media platforms. You get a free gift from me, and you get monthly Zoom calls with me as we dive into conversations around mental health, mental illness, and how to help your mindset shift so that you can actually feel alleviated from the burden, the pain, the anxiety, the fear, the sadness, whatever it is that you are going through. But we have to stay vigilant, we have to stay prayerful, and we have to stay informed of the devil's tactics so we can overcome him and beat him at his own game. Until next time, God bless you, and thank you for watching.